All right, this Pop's talking about Homestead. Angel Studios' new film is sort of like this dystopian, apocalyptic disaster film about survivalism and a prepper and how you would deal with this sort of chaos in America. So let's talk about this film right now. All right, Homestead is based on a book series called Black Autumn, not something I'm real familiar with, but the premise is something that I actually really enjoy. These sort of how do you survive in these situations? I've always said the first season of Lost, and one of my favorite shows is called Jericho. And even something like Designated Survivor kind of gets into this. What if everything sort of collapses? The doomsday prepper reality becomes reality. And that's what happens. Neil McDonough takes the star and leading role in this film, but he really isn't sort of showcased. There's a ton of different characters, a ton of different actors, and the film centers around a bomb going off right outside of LA. It's a quick little scene. You have this sort of calamity that breaks out, and next thing you know, it's completely insane. One thing that happens really early on is how does the family get out of town? Like they have someone they know, there's this place they're going to get to, and things are kind of loosely played together. The name of the facility that they're going to is called Homestead. Ian Ross, played by Neil McDonough, is sort of the patriarch of this massive mansion and property that's kind of in the woods and the mountains. And you have a little retreating moment, and then you have cutaway sequences with them trying to get out of town. The other thing that you have happen is you have a family that's in the city and they're trying to figure out like what do we do? Now, trained military is this guy, and it's an interesting element because he is really still reeling from how to fit into our society, how to fit into our world, and this is like kind of what he's trained to do. And his family is just not into it. They don't know what to do. You have a son that's ready to leave. He's got this one's over here talking about this. This one's over here talking about that. It is just a whole lot of real life experiences thrown into the chaos. So there are moments like this where you have the family not knowing what to do and how to react to everything. And I will say the uncertainty is the best part of the movie is to know I don't exactly know what to do, what to think. And I do feel like a movie like this though does suffer from the fact that it lives in a bubble that no one is ever exposed to this potential. And I think that there's the concept of preparing, but you haven't gameplayed out a lot of scenarios. For instance, his neighbor is treated as quote an enemy, and yet the end of the film, we realize that 20 days has transpired. And you would think within the course of, I don't know, 20 days, someone would come up with some sort of conversation, some sort of agreement on how we're going to move forward, or even partner and join resources. There could be a way to work that out, even if they're neighbors that don't get along real well. So things like that don't work really well for me. And then the idea that you have this person who kind of knows they're in danger and need to do something, but they don't even own a gun. They haven't made any move within X amount of time to figure out how to protect their family. The woman that is driving the electrical car, got the EV vehicle, going to run out of battery, middle of nowhere. She's forced to make horrible decisions that she would not do. She's embarrassed, and it's really done in a very believable way. And I know it's going to be very cliche and very silly in a lot of ways because overall, Homestead doesn't really feel like a major motion picture version of all of this. We've seen it with like 2012 or other disaster films, but this feels more like a TV series pilot. This feels like a made for TV movie that's going to come a series or something like that. It doesn't feel epic. It doesn't feel really massive. And none of the characters are like these characters you're going to cry over if they were to, uh, fall ill will to the chaos that's out in the world. So this is the son. The son is the only character that's given like a massive range of emotions to kind of play out on the screen. He is caught up in the middle of a tragic shooting. He's dealing with the consequences of that. What is the sort of like emotional ramifications of that? But the film doesn't kind of hold that together. It kind of loses the thread a little bit, and it's like as much as that impact is there, it's sort of like, I'm okay. This is what's going on over here, and we'll get to that in the spoilers. I'll keep that a little bit to the end of the video, but I just didn't care for how quickly he could kind of move on and kind of still hold it together. One of the elements that's really good in the film is who you're gonna trust, who you're gonna let in. You may have close friends that are on the outside of the fence, but then you're like willing to open your gate for some useless relative. So it is a very interesting conversation on who brings what to the table, who do you trust, how many people can you feed, what does it look like? And there's like great conversations about these are the resources we have, how many months it puts us out. We can't take care of everyone. With that said, though, I still had some problems with that. Because the biggest concept is Neil McDonough's character Ian trying to figure out like how we're gonna make this work, but it's all about like growing food. It's all about bread and potatoes, and I'm like, y'all don't have any animals. You don't have any meat. You don't have people out there protecting these animals in the middle of some. I feel like it wasn't really well thought of. They had this stockpile of grain, but it wasn't really animal proof. That's we'll say is a semi spoiler, but I'm like again, the prepper thing wasn't really executed out very well. I think it would have been easier to sell us on this film if he had just been like the rich relative on this giant mansion and ranch. They knew they could go there if they needed someone, but not the sort of feeling that this is the fallback position for everyone. I feel like that's what kind of got all discombobulated with everything. And the military guys, as much as I do enjoy some of the things that they tried to do and some of the conflict and how things are kind of presented, it actually gets tedious as well because I feel like we're supposed to see some growth and figure out who he kind of is, but at the same time, it doesn't really quite work for me. I don't have like enough of a story there to really get too excited about. And there is the big conflict. You see some of these pieces in the trailer and all of that, but I'll get into spoilers now so you can know there's spoilers that are coming. But overall, I think Homestead is an enjoyable film. It's kind of midland, but I enjoy these type of movies. So I'm a little more biased than most people. So for me, it's more like a 3.5 star movie, even though it's probably not quite that good. This is my kind of film. I do enjoy these uh, takes on things and these thought processes, the experiments that you might have trying to deal with everything. All right, let me get into spoilers. Now, the biggest thing for me is the son story because I like the fact that he's the most vulnerable character. He gets caught himself up in this shooting, accidentally kills somebody, and then at the end of the movie, there's this big conflict with this crazy corrupt politician. He's coming in to basically just steal resources, and you have this quick shooting of the main character, and I'm like, that was weird. Why didn't you do the son? Why didn't you have the son trying to jump in front of the bullet for the dad? Or you have something that kind of would have made some sort of sense of all of this. So the threads didn't come together as well as I would have hoped. I don't totally dislike anything. And the fact that he's laying there at the end of the movie, there's it's not really a sterile medical environment. You don't feel like it's a medical area at all. It was really very, I mean, literally like MASH seems more medical than the scene in this movie. And he's just like saying his lines in the perfect vocalization. Like it was the worst close to, and it was about the wife's faith. She's been running the show and she has had faith and she just had faith to open the gates and they'd figure it out. And so had this idea and so had that idea. And again, I go back to my thoughts from earlier like, what was the real plan here? You're doomsday preppers or you're not doomsday preppers. You're the fallback thing, or you're just wealthy and you had the money to hire this military contractors. And if you did, why was there not a plan or conversation about how the perimeter would be protected and how everything would come together? All right, there are other situations that I think are just really ill advised, like the whole concept of the faith kind of being shoehorned in about fear, because Ian's just constantly living in fear. Like, I don't have the resources, I don't have the resources. How will I feed anything? The match doesn't add up. And she's just always like doing a little bit of the God card, but it's just like this bland, generic, I'm God's out there, he'll deliver kind of thing. He never wanted to be assertive enough that like see her pray or having more faith kind of out there, and yet they wanted to kind of hang their hat on this being a pivotal thing in the movie, and I thought that really fell pretty flat. This thing at the end of the movie, the conflict, it kind of escalates where you end up with like a hot situation and gunfire, this corrupt politician coming in to steal things or whatever. At some point, again, 20 days later, by the timeline that's laid out later on at the end of the movie, because it's like, oh, this has been 10 days, so therefore it's 30 days. You're like, okay, hold on. There'd be some sort of government in place. There'd be some sort of thing. Now, I admit that communication will be difficult, but again, doomsday prepper people, the one lady is like tied to Homeland Security or State Department or something. And then the military operatives, he's listening to a radio thing. there'd be a way to communicate what the infrastructure sort of is post EMP, post the grid going down. And why would Russia take down the eastern seaboard but not the western seaboard? And why is the nuke related to the Russians? And then again, we're having these weird Texas and California people references. I'm like, it was so throw things against the wall. Um, Obviously, just like most shows, it doesn't look like what apocalyptic world would look like. Walking Dead does it better than anyone else. These people are clean. You never see them go to the bathroom. You don't totally understand how any of these things are going to work. The kids have this time to grow flowers. They're not playing with like produce. They were literally growing like flowers. And it's just this weird thing. And then the mom encourages and kind of throws it in this young love thing and hope and blah blah blah. See, all of that got in the way of the heart of survival and the true spirit of the human thing, and then the challenge of who do you trust and how do you move forward and how do you balance things. So the film just doesn't quite land on all the cylinders, and like I said, for most people this is probably a 2.5 star movie, pretty midland. And some people will just hate it outright because it really doesn't do anything particularly challenging or interesting, but it does pull back the curtain a little bit on what if scenarios, and that's what I actually enjoyed about the movie. Anyway, that's my take on it. Love to hear from you what your thoughts are, whether they're going to see it or not, and if you do see it, what do you think of it? So let me know. Thanks for watching, everybody. I am Pops.